back to another episode of the Personal Trainers Who Care podcast. I'm Vanya, one of the personal trainers here at Freeform Fitness in Ottawa. Each episode, I interview one of our personal trainers, clients, or health professional to help give you more concrete tools to make your life a little bit better. In today's episode, I sit down with Dan Moses, a personal trainer from our Glebe location team. Dan was actually already a fellow trainer here when I started working for Freeform Fitness 10 years ago. We worked together for about 4 to 6 months before he left to pursue other opportunities. In this discussion, we talk about where he's been the last 10 years, as well as talking about some of the biggest mistakes people make when making New Year's resolutions or when they're working towards any goal at any time of the year. Now, before we begin, if you've enjoyed our podcast so far or any of the other videos that we've put out, please subscribe if you haven't done so already to help support our channel. Our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I hope you enjoy this episode with Dan. So Dan, welcome back to the team.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes. I remember back when I first started working for Freeform 10 years ago at Wellington. You were there as well.
Yes.
And I don't think that we were working together for all that long, maybe 4 or 6 months.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, before you ended up leaving.
Yes.
And so why don't you start off by telling us a little bit more about, what you've been up to over the past 10 years.
Yeah, definitely. So the reason I left initially is that I wanted to develop more of my skills in regards to different demographics of people. So when I first entered Freeform, I was straight out of college, and I was in a position where, not that I thought that I knew it all, but I just wanted to be more diversify what I already know to make my position a lot better. Mm-hmm. So I started working in group homes with people with cerebral palsy or other physical disabilities, and developing workout programs for not only them, but some of their caregivers, family members, or whoever looked after them. So I worked in different organizations throughout the city, some profit, some non-profit, and just help develop physical skills for a different clientele base, such as that.
Yes. That's really cool. And working with people with those disabilities is one thing, but I like how you mentioned that you ended up working with the caregivers and family members as well.
While doing that, that made my ability to teach exercises a lot better, because I think it's one thing when you have somebody and you're telling them what to do specifically, but when you have to tell a secondary person, this is what they're doing, this is how to do it, so when I'm not there, that they're teaching those exercises correctly, not giving them a plan and saying, Todd, I think this is what he means, so let's try this for 10 reps. So
exactly. Yeah, you and I both know we've tried to give clients homework all the time.
Yes.
And the amount of times that they come back and I ask them, okay, did you do your exercises?
Yes.
And they say yes, and then I'll tell them, okay, show me how you did them.
For sure.
And then it's never quite the way you initially told them, right?
Exactly.
So I can see how telling somebody who has to then teach somebody who is probably in some cases already quite limited, that's a huge challenge, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that is the main challenge, is getting them to do those exercises. But the big point I think that's helped with my development too is giving them the understanding of why it's important to do that for their son or whomever it is. Because at the end of the day, we're doing these exercises for one of their loved ones or one person that they care about. It's just demonstrating, giving your son who has cerebral palsy to do these exercises. This is going to help with their motor skills. So instead of you having to help them eat, if they do these hand exercises or upper body strength exercises, there's going to come a day, it might not be tomorrow, maybe a year from now, but they'll be able to eat by themselves because they have that strength there. So that's something that's off your plate that you don't have to worry about anymore, because they can do it for themselves.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing, because that not only improves the patient's quality of life, but they're caregivers as well, right? It just frees
Exactly.
everybody up to be able to do more.
And I think
on their
that's
own.
like the best thing is you find somebody who doesn't think they can be as independent, or their family or caregiver doesn't think they can be independent, then all of a sudden we're doing these exercises and they just stand back and they're proud. They may have a happy cry because they're saying, I didn't even think my son or daughter would be able to do this
Yeah.
or have the ability to do things on their own. But when
Yeah.
you work with them, they found out, wow, I can. So again, that gives them a de-stress, but that makes them proud, or have that proud feeling for their family member, because it's like, wow, they're able to do this. And eventually, instead of maybe being in a wheelchair, they'll be from a wheelchair to a walker, and hopefully from a walker where they may have just different mechanisms to help them walk on their own. If it's again, it's always that progression from not being able to do anything to progressively being able to do whatever they can based on their capabilities. So.
Exactly. And yeah, I find that sometimes, I try and kind of like think back to what it was like not be able to do something, right? Because it's easy to take for granted all of the things that we are able to do, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it's just the littlest things can be enough to make a big impact on someone's life.
For sure.
And I remember a few years ago, I had an older woman client that I was working with, and one of the questions that I always ask my clients is, when I first meet them, is what's something that you can't do right now that you would like to be able to do in the future? And for her, she was like, oh, I just want to be able to put my bra on while I can clasp it behind my back without having to clasp it from the front and turn it around. And I don't know, that's how I put my bra on, so it wouldn't seem like a big deal for me, but that was something that she really wanted to do. So we worked on, her shoulder mobility so that she could reach around and put her hands together behind her back to be able to put on her bra. And within like a month or so, she was able to do that. And I remember the day she came in for a session, she was like, oh, I can finally put my bra on.
Yes, for sure.
So yeah, things like even being able to feed yourself.
Yes.
I know that a lot of times, especially for regular people who aren't trainers, right? They can't necessarily break down those movements into those like simpler steps to be able to work up to, how do I learn how to put a spoon up to my mouth?
Exactly. And I think even going back to my own training background, I think comes from like a lot of different trainers too. They come from more so maybe an athletic or sports background. So when you're telling somebody to do a squat, you're used to being on a sports team, for instance. Everybody knows how to do a squat. Then when you go into the training realm, you're dealing with a lot of people who have no idea what a squat is, the proper form. So it gives you that realization of kind of breaking out of your own mindset when you're always around like a certain demographic of people. So if you're always around like athletic people, you just kind of have like the horse blinders on when you think everybody should be able to do this. Then when you go outside of that, you're just like, wow, okay. Now we have to go back to the starting point of the foundation. So I think that gave me the realization working with that group of people, just like, just the ability, their satisfaction again was grabbing a spoon, or simply that, grabbing the spoon or fork, just starting off with that. Then maybe they drop it, but at least picking it up and having the dexterity in their hands to at least pick it up and just hold it there. That was a wow, I'm doing something. I think coming back to like the other training side of things, like as your client, just being able to put on the bra from behind instead of forward, or doing something, a simple task like that, finding that for your clients is really what I think gives people that motivation to come back or see you or continue on with training. So.
For sure. So how long were you in that role for?
I was in that role for probably a good, 7 or 8 years. So and like I said, it was very joyful. It was very rewarding, to say the least, because it's just something, a small task, like as you mentioned, that people take for granted on a day-to-day basis, and watching people smile just for the simple fact of, again, picking up a fork, brushing their teeth, something like that is, again, very rewarding.
And were there any examples of people you worked with where even you couldn't believe how far they were able to go?
Yeah, I think the big thing I had with one client who had cerebral palsy, and he loved video games. And the
Yeah.
thing is, obviously, you need a dexterity in your hands to do play different games. And obviously, I'm not a video game buff by no means,
Yeah.
but I know there's different controllers. Some, if you're playing like a shooting game, you have like a gun controller or something of that, or a wheelchair if you're doing, or not a wheelchair, sorry, steering wheel if you're doing like doing a racer. So I think the big thing for him is he wanted to be able to again use a different controller if he was playing his Xbox compared to a PlayStation, compared to even if it was a Wii game to do like tennis or bowling or one of those different games. I think the biggest thing that made me like satisfied with him is again doing like different exercises throughout his upper body, that he had the mobility to again he could transition from one controller to the next, and he was just happy for all the different like game systems he had. He didn't have to worry about or have one of his caregivers helping him press the buttons, or if he was playing Wii, they'll kind of guide his hand to do a backhand for tennis, for instance, where he was more than capable of doing himself, just working on those exercises. So that was like one of the rewarding things, and he was grateful for it because again, it comes down to making somebody independent, and not having to have to worry about somebody doing something for them. I think even from like this side of the spectrum, with working with people with physical disabilities, I think it's at the same thing if you're working with like an elderly population. Some clients that I've had in the past, maybe you have, is that they just want to be able to roll out of bed in the morning and not having their wife or husband help them or assist them out of bed, just to simply get up on their own. Same principle applies with a lot of people with physical disabilities. They just want to be able to do things and not have to ask for help.
Exactly. Yeah, that independence is huge. And being able to help people get out of pain, even as
Yes.
well. Yeah, I remember lots of times where clients would come in and be like, "Oh, last night was the first time I could sleep with no pain in my shoulder in months." And
For sure.
yeah, it's like to be able to even get sleep
Yes.
is amazing, right? And it just kind of like spurs on, and you're able to do so much more throughout the rest of your life. Once you're able to get yourself strong, mobile, be able to do a little bit more, it just kind of like infiltrates itself into all aspects of
For
your
sure.
life, right?
For sure.
So yeah, cool. And yeah, so where did you go from there?
From there, I worked at like a big box, more like fitness company, and again, like my main focus was like training, my clients. I did some managerial stuff as well, but I think that's not the main issue with a lot of like the bigger box companies. They're so by their numbers, by the books, that when it comes to actually how the members of their club or facility are treated, that kind of goes on the back burner, as that they could care less if they're there as long as they are there. So if they sign up and you never see them again, they could care less. So that was the thing that was kind of hurt in a way, where I went into the field to make sure that I give people accountability, that they're always welcome. So even when I worked at the big box that they had thousands of members, my big thing was remember people's names. So even if I see 200 people a day, try to remember those 200 people a day. I'd learn something about them.
Yeah.
And I think even when I was there, that was the thing that a lot of members appreciated, for the fact that I knew who they are. If they told me they were going bowling this past weekend, on Monday I'd ask how I was bowling, and just developing that relationship.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's amazing how shocked people can get when you do remember those little details, right? They really appreciate it. And yeah, I don't know if that says more about you as a person or just society in general, that something so simple can be so meaningful to somebody, right? But either way, it's a good thing.
Yes. And I think at the end of the day, that's what brought me back here, and what I loved about Freeform. Like, as you know, it's a family environment. I know if I need something from you, it could not even be work related, that you'll give me the time of day to answer me or help me out in that aspect. I think everybody who works within Freeform Fitness, same principle applies, that if somebody needs help with something, it might not even be anything work related, people are family here, and they just want to, like, you're my sister per se. If I have a
Yeah.
question or something, you'd help me out, and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really does feel good to be able to have so many people to reach out to for help
Exactly.
with whatever you need, whether it's knowing a specific trainer has an expertise in one area of training that you can ask for, or if even just like needing a few people to help move.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, we're lucky to have a lot of strong people to help out with stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And yeah, same thing with clients as well. They have a full roster of people that they can feel like they can turn to for help. It's not just the one trainer that they're working with, right?
Exactly. And I think that's a great way to, like, obviously build and develop relationships. And at the end of the day, that's, for me, that's one of the most important things, is whoever's in your life, just building those relationships with them. So clients, coworkers, whomever.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah, so going back to how, you didn't like how at the bigger box gym, they were just selling memberships, and once they got the sale, they didn't really care whether people, kept up with coming into the gym and using the facilities or not. So, that leads us to, since it is January, a big trend or something that happens almost pretty much every year is, people assess in January what they want to achieve over the next year, make those resolutions or set goals and stuff like that. But unfortunately, not very many people are actually successful with attaining those goals.
For sure.
Yeah, so you and I have been in the industry for over 10 years now.
Yes.
And we see this a lot. So in your view, why do people fail? Why do they not achieve any goal that they set out to achieve in January?
I think the biggest thing is that most people bite off more than they can chew when it comes to their goals. They either don't make them realistic or it's not tangible for them. I think a lot of people say, oh, starting January 1st, I'm going to come to the gym, get a trainer. I'm going 7 days a week. I'm going all out. But one, if they're deconditioned and they've never worked out regularly before, after the first day, you're going to be sore. And if you keep on doing that, you're just going to quit because your body just physically is incapable of doing that. Number two is that they're trying to say, oh, I'm going to go to the gym for like 2 hours every day. They might not have, based on the work schedule, family life, everything else, 2 hours to be in a gym. So they're already failing before they begin. So I think, like, that's the big thing, is that people aren't realistic with their goals, or they don't do things that are tangible or achievable based on their work life, personal life, and everything along those lines.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, having that understanding that you have that whole year, and more realistically, it should be the rest of your life.
Yes,
because
exactly.
When you make a change, it's not just for a short term, right? You should have the mindset that, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing forever.
For sure.
Right? And yeah, what I find is that a lot of people have those more ambiguous goals, like, okay, this year I just want to be healthier. And it's so broad and generic. They don't really narrow it down. So you don't think about, okay, what does that actually mean for me? You don't have that focus on the habits that you actually need to be doing on a daily basis.
And I think that's like the big thing too, is people need to find out what specifically they mean, because your version of what's healthy and my version of what's healthy may be completely different. So, like, as you said, like, defining that, and again, it's not one size fits all. It's not a weekend success. It's over a lifetime as well. So, for instance, if somebody comes to me and they say they want to lose, let's say 10 pounds, for instance, they say, I want to lose 10 pounds in like 2 weeks. The first thing I might say to them is, like, how long did it take you to gain those 10 pounds? And if they say they gained those 10 pounds over the year, then I'll go back to them and say, well, it's probably going to take that year just to lose those 10 pounds, just based on the consistency. So that's like one of those things. Or even if it's build muscle, so realistic, or having like that time frame. So again, if it's losing weight that you gained, if you gain that amount of weight over an extended period of time, you have to think it's probably going to take that same amount of time, maybe even longer, because you have to build in those healthy habits to begin with to lose that weight or whatever your specific goals may be.
Exactly. And yeah, having that long-term time frame is also important, because when you do kind of like, people call it slipping up, but really it's not.
Yes.
Because yeah, if you say, okay, I want to lose weight, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to cut out all junk food and never have something like pizza or hamburgers ever again.
Exactly.
Right? But I find that when somebody has that goal to lose weight or eat healthier in January, and then it's like at the end of the month, they go out with a friend and have a burger, they get disappointed in themselves, right? And they're like, oh, I guess I failed. But it's like, no, it's one time. That's okay. You still have the rest of your year to work towards, improving your overall daily habits, right? So it's figuring out, how much of the fun stuff you can have, while still being able to reach your goals.
And I think like that's even like the other thing that people need to think about. When I think of health, you can't just think about like your physical health. You want your emotional health, different varieties of health. So even if it comes down to like that, for instance, if they have like burgers and fries on February 1st, they shouldn't think, oh, I ruined my New Year's resolution. Or burger and fries, like the best thing to eat in the world, technically speaking, especially depending where you get it from. Maybe not, but if you're having burgers and fries and you're going out with your spouse or you're going out with friends, well, you're building an emotional connection right there. You're developing your relationship with that person. So eating, maybe not the greatest option, but you're building a connection with the relationships you already have in your life. That's not a bad thing. So that's why, and again, as you said, you're going down to the long run. So going out for drinks or eating a pizza every now and again isn't the worst thing in the world to do. But again, just keeping that focus, you want to eat healthier throughout the extended period of time, but having those nights that you do certain things or eat certain things, that's not the worst thing to do. You don't want to go to somebody's birthday party and refusing cake, refusing drinks, because I think the worst thing in the world can be is you're being that stickler of a person that they get invited out to some place and you're refusing things, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to want to invite you if they know if you're coming, you're not going to enjoy what the other people are doing. So
exactly. And and again, it's figuring out, okay, what's important in my life? Is it more the relationships aspect, or is it my own physical health? And whichever it is, unfortunately, the trade-offs do have to be made at some point, right? Depending on what's most important to you.
For sure.
And navigating that can be quite tough for some people.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's the bridge that people need to find, is that there's obviously like cons and negatives to like everything that you do in life. So even if if you want to be in top physical condition, well, if you reach that goal, that pro is that you're in top physical condition. But at the same time, that means that if you love pepperoni pizza, well, you're going to be denying that food that you love to reach that goal. So again, there's pros and negatives to everything. But again, finding that balancing act to best support yourself as an overall healthy well-being.
Yeah. Why do you think a lot of our clients have trouble with figuring out what the right balance is for them?
I think they need to have like more of an understanding per se. So what I tell like a lot of people, if it's not written down, it isn't managed. So I say the same thing comes to exercise, can be the same thing that applies to finances. I think most of our clientele are probably financially savvy. I think you have to put the same principle applies with your finances as in with like the health and fitness side of things. So if we give you like different things to do at home and you're not managing it, are you going to be really successful in regards to your health? Probably not. So that's the prime example. If I get, if I say, if you have like a credit card, you don't even know what your limit is, and you just willy nilly, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this, and you're not even looking at your credit card statements at the end of the month. Are your finances in order? Probably not. So that's the same thing in regards to training, that you want to try to write down or see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, because that gives you tangible evidence of what you may or may not want to improve on. And I always say, give them that financial side thing, so that 9 times out of 10 they understand the finances. If you put that mindset in regards to your fitness mindset, then I think that's things that they can build up upon, and that's going to help them succeed. Then I might go on a run today, but if you're not managing how long did I go for, or you're not checking your heart rate, you're not checking how many steps you have within a day, then you don't have like any evidence to see, am I improving or am I not improving?
Yeah, exactly. And that awareness of where you're currently at is huge.
Exactly.
Right? And yeah, I have the perfect example. A few years ago, I had a client, and whenever you ask somebody what their eating habits are like, the most common answer we get is, "Oh, it's pretty good," right? So the first step is, for me at least, defining what pretty good means to them. And then to get that starting point of where they're at now, I always ask them to give me a snapshot of what they generally eat over 3 or 4 days or so. So I remember, this was one of the clients who said, "Oh, I eat fairly well." And so I asked her to keep track of her next 3 days of eating. And then she comes in for her next session. The first thing she says to me is like, "Oh, Vanya, I don't eat very well at all." It's like, because we tend to overestimate the quote unquote good things that we do, and we tend to kind of forget about all the the not so good things that we do, right? And she was saying that, "Oh, did you know I keep a bag of candy beside my bed, and that's what I'm eating before I go to sleep." It's like little things like that. Unless you kind of stop, pay attention, and write it down, sometimes it doesn't even occur to you, right?
And I think even with some of my clients in the past too, like the same thing, it goes down to like nutritional habits. They'll say like, I eat fairly well. Same principle. When they come back, they say they don't eat well, or I ask them to record it. There might be one day because they're so busy that they forget to eat. They have to think. It's like, I didn't even eat yesterday because I went to this meeting, went this, pick my kids up from school, and I'm doing things like that. And I think that's the big thing that you want to stress, like as you said, like writing it down. But at the same time, I think it just goes down to people don't, for our clientele, if you're asking them a direct question, they don't want to make themselves sound bad. And I think that goes along for everyone. So everyone's going to say that they're above average on most things, because nobody wants to say, "Oh, I suck." Like my eating habits suck, my workouts suck. I just suck as an individual. Nobody wants to say that. So I just think until they actually, again, physically write something down, that's when they're going to have that understanding. Okay, no, you don't suck. Yeah, you can improve on certain areas, but again, knowing where to improve on. Like your client, there was the candy at the edge of the bed. For one of my clients in the past, is like every time they'd have movie night with a family, well, here comes a popcorn, and they're eating that, or they're having chips, and they're saying, I remember doing movies, but they don't even thinking to themselves, while I'm watching the movies, I'm just snacking on whatever's in front of me. I'm just saying, "Oh, I went to movies," but you're not realizing, "Oh, that's something that I'm actually consuming that I didn't think about until I actually write it down that day."
Yeah, because you don't think, "Oh, a handful of chips here, a handful of this there is going to do too much." But when you add all those handfuls together,
for sure. And I think even when it comes down to it, even like understanding, you don't have to be a stickler again and read like food labels to the core, but understanding like the bag of chips, it might say like 60 calories, but it might be 60 calories per 3 chips, and just understanding that food labels they trick you like that sometimes. I tell some of my clients they trick you. Yeah, it might say certain calories, but is that calories per the bottle or container? Or is that per one of a chip or one almond or whatever it may be?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So for you, when you're helping a client, go through a change like this. So let's say, for example, weight loss.
Yes.
What are your first steps, and how do you go about with helping them navigate through this?
Well, I think again, I try to make things. What's something that I know a client can do that's tangible. So a lot of things I tell people is like, do you have a smartwatch? If you don't have a smartwatch, everybody probably has a smartphone. And I say, tell me today if I meet them, how many steps have you done today?
Yeah.
Then they'll go on their smartwatch, go on the app, or go on their phone and say, oh, 3,000. Like, tell me how many steps you did yesterday. They say, oh, around like 4,000. So I say, so let's say on average you do 3,500 steps a day. Well, moving forward from starting tomorrow, up it to 5,000. Do you think that's possible? It's like, yeah, because sometimes, like, I walked here, but sometimes I'll drive if I'm lazy or what have you. Say, okay, a tangible thing you can do for the next week is increase your steps from the 3,500 that you're typically doing to 5,000. That's something that's easily manageable, and that's worked with clients in the past where they're looking late at night, they're looking at their watch, oh, I have 500 steps that I need to do. So I've had a client that I did an intro sessions with her, and she said that at the end of the night she'd look and say, oh, I have 500 more steps. So she'd just go out on an evening walk that she'd never do before because she just wants to hit those steps count. So that's something that I tell my clients, that's something manageable to do. So something as simple as just increasing your steps, because again, that gives me a tangible evidence, a control variable. So you're working in here with me, which is great, but what are you doing outside of being here with me? Something that's easy is always say, increase your steps. So it might be 5,000 for the next week. Okay, after that, let's go 8,000. By the end of the month, let's try to every day be doing 10,000 steps a day. Because that's, again, something that's going to increase their physical activity. And that's something that they can look at, oh, that's a goal that I want to achieve. Which is simple, looking at my smartwatch, oh, I have 2,000 steps to do. Hey, kids, let's go for a walk. Or doing something like that. So.
Yeah, people don't realize how underrated just walking more is, right? Especially these days when, for the most part, a lot of people are still working from home. And yeah, it's amazing how little people are moving. And actually, the same client that I was talking about earlier, I remember asking her how many steps she was taking, and there was one day where she had, I think, less than 500.
Yeah.
And this was before the pandemic, so she was actually, leaving her house, driving to work, and then going into the office. So yeah, I have no idea how that happens, that little amount of steps. But yeah, so I can't imagine if people are working from home, just getting out of bed, walking a few steps to their office or living room or wherever their home setup is.
Exactly.
Like, if you're not actively thinking about going for a walk, leaving your house, then yeah, people really aren't moving that much.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the one thing is people's like, what they're doing like physically in regards to move, but again, when it comes to like different like eating habits, how to make that manageable. I think the worst thing somebody can do is, again, if it's a New Year's resolution thing, is say, oh, starting this day, all I'm going to be eating is chicken, rice, and broccoli. And it's like, well, good luck with that, because I don't even do that. I'm not saying I'm a perfect individual, but that's a difficult thing to do. So the easiest thing I tell people to do when it comes to nutrition habits, eat whatever you're eating right now. I don't care if you go to McDonald's 3 times a week, go to McDonald's 3 times a week, but just reduce your portion size for right now. So if you go to McDonald's, instead of having that large fries, just have a small fries. Do that for a week. Eat whatever you're eating, reduce the portion sizes smaller than you would. Then the next week, if it's, instead of having that burger from McDonald's, just try to have a burger from a healthier option or make the burger from home. Still have that McDonald's fries. Go to McDonald's, get your small fries, just make the burger from home. Switch that McDonald's burger from an at-home burger. And just do small little substitutions like that. I think that's going to help people. You're going to be eating the foods that you love.
Yeah.
But again, looking at the healthier option, I think that's what makes things attainable in regards to the nutritional side of things. If you love pizza, don't think for the rest of your life you're never going to eat pizza because in your head you're thinking it's not a good option. So we'll substitute it. Make pizzas from home. Use whole grain flour, for instance, to make it from home instead of having like different like pepperoni. Yeah, you can have pepperoni one thing, but throw on some spinach or something else like that, provolone, or maybe a healthier like meat option, but still eat the things that you enjoy eating. Just reduce the portion sizes, but make those smarter substitutions. Because at the end of the day, if your caloric intake is so high, let's say 4,000 calories a day because you're eating poorly, by just substituting a healthier version, that caloric intake is going to reduce just based on that. So then your body is going to naturally feel or see those changes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And reducing your calories doesn't necessarily mean you actually have to count calories,
Exactly.
right? So yeah, I give similar suggestions. One thing I tell clients is, yeah, just keep eating whatever you normally eat, but it's figuring out, little tricks to make yourself eat less. So a big thing is, using certain dishware. So if you're always using like an enormous size plate, then okay, try and find a smaller size plate to eat your dinner off of.
Exactly.
Right? And then, you're not having to change what you're eating, but it's just reducing the total amount that you're eating.
For sure, for sure. I think that works too, and the same with like water consumption as well. I think the easiest thing that just have a water bottle. I think when you have a water bottle, you're just naturally, you're not doing anything. You're popping the lid and you're gonna have a sip of that water.
Yeah.
Just doing something like that, just having it right beside you, you're more than likely going to consume water. One of the things is you full well that you don't drink enough water throughout the day.
Yeah.
Just having a water bottle on you for 90% of the times you're at work or at home and you just have it right beside you, you're just naturally, subconsciously just going to pick it up and have a sip. So.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like, I find that people tend to overcomplicate things too much, right? It's like, oh, I have to do this, this, and this. And it's like, no, just focus on one thing, change, one or two habits at a time, get used to that. And once that becomes easy and you don't have to think about it anymore, that's where you can look at, okay, what's the next step, right? So yeah, keep things simple, and it's not complicated.
No, I agree. It's just like, as you mentioned, I just think people try to reinvent the wheel all the time, where they think to be a healthy person you have to make a drastic change. It doesn't have to be drastic. Like again, just one step at a time. Replace something with another. Just do small little things, small little changes. And that's gonna help you better off in the long run. Than again, when it comes down to why people fail in a lot of their goals, is they try to make the change just a complete 360 and think that's going to be manageable when it's not.
Yeah, and just be patient as well, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen in a month, but 6 months, 1 year down the road, if you are consistent with those changes that you're implementing, then yeah, you will see a change.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so keep it simple, be patient. It's boring, but
it
works.
Exactly.
Yeah, and yeah, unfortunately, people always think we have some secret, right? But like, no, there's no secret.
I think there's no secret, and as I tell a lot of my clients too, is like I have the similar struggles to you.
Yeah.
Like I'm a burger and fries guy. If I could have burgers and fries, that's the only thing that I eat for the rest of my life, I'd probably love it. But I just know full well that's it's not manageable too. My digestive system is going to say otherwise.
No, exactly.
So I just think, just understanding that we're humans too. Yes, we're here to help you, but I have my own personal struggles. You have your own personal struggles, but it's just finding a way to bridge that gap and help supporting myself. And I know me being supportive of myself, that's going to be me helping you at the end of the day as well.